So there were a bunch of things, and many thanks to Robert here, because a lot of this came out in the course of his issue, some general observations and questions on the spec. And one of them also Brathy caught really early that I know Jeremy helped with, which was we had accidentally at one point clipped out Annex B on elf embedding. Don't ask me how this happened. Well, I mean, mechanically we know how this happened because Jeremy did the research. But in terms of like what we were thinking, I don't know. Yeah. But
Ed, I can. My question was, should it be in a separate? Because I found the Annex A was moved out separately from the spec. So should I could do the same thing, or should there be one annex with Annex A and B? So
I've already put a PR out to move it into Annex B as a separate file and make a note about that. And my hope is, since this is something that was material we previously reviewed and merged, that we could review it relatively quickly.
It just needs to be replaced to Omnibor. I don't know if that's done, but yeah, it had Git bomb in it.
I think I did that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
So for example, note.omnibor and owner field of all caps Omnibor, and then you know, which is to say, and then further down with the all caps Omnibor. So I think I got the Git bomb to Omnibor stuff here.
Okay. Sounds good. I will review it today. And
you've got another PR that's Git bomb to Omnibor on the spec paths too. So do you need an LGTM or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, so like basically we've got some folks here on the call. I think both Frederick and Nell have the capacity to merge this if we're good. If folks would like to do like an LGTM comment, that's also welcome. You know, however you'd like to handle it. It would be good to get this back in sooner rather than later, because this is, again, my problems are not necessarily everyone's problems, but I have some internal people who wanted to go take a look at the spec, and I'm like, wait, hang on, just a minute. Wait, hang on, we left out a piece.
If no one objects, I'm happy to merge it right now.
Do it.
Cool.
Are there any objections or cautions before we do that?
It looks fine to me. But I wonder if Annex B is going to become like a general purpose. How do you embed Omnibor information into random file X, or are we going to have separate appendices, annexes for each?
So yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm frankly, I'm not sure what's the right answer for that. I know the way this is currently constructed is Annex B is for embedding into all files. And we could do separate annexes for other things. It does sort of put you in the nice position of, you know, when someone's working on the how do you embed this into Java class files. That's sort of its own thing.
I think it's fine for now, but should we come to a point where we want to generalize it more, where we're adding more things that could go well in Appendix B, I think we could revisit it then.
I just added a minor comment, but after that it can be merged. Yeah.
Okay, hang on. Let me refresh to catch the minor comment, and I do appreciate the close eyes. Okay. So I'll go ahead and fix that and ping someone to go and merge after that.
Oh, and one more.
You were saying, Robert?
That. Yeah, I will just add it. The padding is just 1 byte. Okay. Because the name change is increased by 1 character, so the padding decreases by 1 character.
Okay.
So one quick question as well. What is SHT note and SHF alloc? I'm not familiar with these.
It's an ELF. It's an ELF section that is a standard way to represent information that can be consumed by the OS or before loading, some information in this node section can be checked for further authentication. So it is a standard purpose for it, and it's a way to provide vendor specific information in the binary. So
Okay, that's useful. Thank you.
Well, I think the essence of that comment is unless it does, this should explicitly refer to ELF documentation. Like there should be a link to the corresponding ELF documentation talking about this.
Do you want to add a comment for that to that effect, Jeremy, or shall I?
I'll do it.
Oh, go ahead. You're saying, Barathi?
No, a documentation to the ELF standard ELF document, because this is going to be custom ELF section, right? So in that sense, the information for the Git bomb section can only be available here. But in general, how a node section should be defined, that can be referenced from the standard ELF document, which describes the format of the node section. But more precisely, what goes into it can only be understood from this document.
Yeah, and I think the line, now that I have a little bit more understanding that I'm trying to draw here, is what comes from us and what comes from the ELF spec.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Jeremy's.
Yeah, even if we don't link, I would love to see linkage there, but even if we don't link, having a clear understanding as to like we're using these part of the ELF spec, and in order to generate this, which comes from us, a little bit more clarity would be good.
Yeah, and I think Jeremy's point really was linking out to, if you're trying to figure out stuff like what is SHT node and SSH alloc and how are ELF files put together, some kind of a pointer to the ELF spec here is probably helpful. And I see your comment here, Jeremy, and that looks great. So anything else we want to capture on the NXP and ELF embedding? Okay. So in that case, I'll move on to sort of Robert had included a whole bunch of really helpful comments. And I had gone through and done some fixes for them. So the first one here was there were some missing Git bomb fixes. Where basically the URLs had not been adjusted. And obviously these needed to be fixed. The good news is that even in the interim when they weren't fixed, the whole Git bomb repo is redirecting to the new Omnibor repo. So we're good there. But this is just a very simple typo-ish fix.
I have no objection to merging that right now.
I'm good as well if everyone else is.
Oh, but it looks like I may not have merge powers on the spec repo.
Mhm.
That would be odd.
If you post a link here, I can give it a shot.
Sure.
My
There have
merge button
been.
disappeared. That's weird.
That is weird. So there have been a couple of weirdnesses along the way where like people got re-invited to various things and may or may not have noticed those emails. So we should definitely investigate that. Were you able to get in there, Frederick?
GitHub just tossed me out. I have to re-sign in with my key, with my external key.
Because of
Feel your
course.
pain. Yeah.
Yes.
It's possible GitHub might be having issues.
Is it?
I
Uh-oh.
don't know.
Status.github.com. Here I come.
Sort of
All
reminds me
systems
of
operational.
yeah, I don't know how many of you have come across Econ Talk with Russ Roberts. It's an old school econ podcast.
Oh yeah,
And he will sometimes point out that if you told people in the 1970s they would have an object in their pocket that would give them access to all the world's music and all the world's movies and television shows and all the world's information and the ability to reach out and communicate via voice or text or video with anyone on the planet. But every now and again, maybe about once a month for 5 minutes, it wouldn't work. They would be astounded. And yet we get very upset during that 5 minutes.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay, it's good to
So
know that
it-
GitHub is having some issues.
but
Well,
it
it
seems
looks-
that they've recovered, but I don't know, like these big distributed services like this, they might say recovered, but you never really know.
And it doesn't look like I have access to it either, so we should probably review or
Yeah, I will definitely go after this call and sort that out with folks and figure out what happened, because that should be
I had
something
to-
you can do.
Explicitly re-accept being a merger after the rename, I think.
it is
My guess
possible
is-
an invite was sent and I may have just missed it. I do get too many emails.
Don't we all?
It did pop up within the GitHub UI for me, so maybe there's just a spot in the UI that you haven't clicked OK on.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have timed out long ago if that was the case.
So since you can merge these things, do you feel comfortable merging this one, Jeremy?
Sorry, just let's clarify, which one are we talking about? Is that
29.
29.
Which is the URL fixes.
Okay.
If
Um,
as an alternative, if this doesn't work, I'm happy to write a comment saying I am okay with Ed merging.
are we using
As long as it's Ed that actually merges it and not someone else.
are we using mergers or rebases? What's the convention? I haven't actually done any mergers here.
I don't think we have a strong convention, frankly. I have a personal knit around rebases, but that's a personal knit. I don't think we've really had the religious discussion yet in this community. But I will not think ill of you either way.
Well, I think that worked. I didn't complain.
And we have achieved merginess. Thank you.
Merginess achieved.
It's not like we're compiling anything here where the intermediates can break. So I think we'll be in good shape.
Okay. I'm going to skip the intro text just really briefly because we have this case where there was an extraneous closed square bracket for number 31, where literally the difference is the deletion of a single character.
Ship it.
So I'm hoping that would. I've occasionally, closed some very thorny one character bugs, but if you're comfortable with number 31, I'll stick it in the chat for you as well. Jeremy, if you're comfortable with that, it would be good to merge. Oh, wow. I didn't realize there was a ship it emoji.
There's a few, but the ship it squirrel is my favorite.
Ship it squirrel.
Yeah.
Oh dear gosh. Oh, that's
I was this many
squirrel.
days.
Yeah.
I was today old when I realized that there was a ship it squirrel.
I didn't realize it was a thing, although I've seen it all over the place.
Oh, this dates back at least back to 2011 hip chat days.
I was about to say this. Yeah, this seems old too, from the drawing of it.
And I was using HipChat in 2011, so it makes sense.
As was I.
I was. I've never been hip. So
Well,
Consider
only the
yourself
chat
lucky.
was hip, not necessarily people on it, myself included.
are you okay with merging number 31, Jeremy? Or
Just did.
okay, cool. Let me refresh. Number 31 is still not showing as merged, but that may just be GitHub being GitHub. Okay.
I think
We
I
may
forgot
have to come back to
click OK. No, it's done now.
Okay, now it's merged. Event propagation is hard. And then going back to number 30, which was on the intro, Somewhat embarrassingly, Robert noticed that in the introduction, we were introducing ourselves with typed text.
I love it.
And so I took a little bit of a pass, and this is a bit more substantive, of writing sort of an intro paragraph and then adapting some of what we had been saying from the front page of Omnibor under Y. And I understand entirely if folks need to digest this a bit more.
Well, this is it was useful because now at the time I knew it was not an integer I was reading. Yes, so our introduction was strongly typed. I'll give folks a little bit of time to digest this. Let me also stick the link to this in the chat if folks want to add comments. Among the things I'm a little
reference to runtime detection of potential vulnerabilities.
Because if you have the Omnibor ID embedded in the resulting binary, so if I've got a binary, and particularly if I have a signed binary from someone, and I've got the embedded Omnibor identifier, then I can use that Omnibor identifier to go pull the dependence graph. Because we're setting SHF alloc, it may also be possible for the program to be able to extract that information from itself and represent to you what it has there. I know I've had some conversations with folks who are doing embedded device work where they would want to use such embedding to be able to type something like, show Omnibor and go use that to go look up the graph and pull the graph and pull vulnerabilities from the graph from running embedded device images.
Yeah, like if I have a favorite XML parser that I like to copy around and I compile with it, it should end up in the graph somewhere. And if a vulnerability is ever discovered with it, we can tell whether or not that specific file was copied and pasted into another spot and compiled with it, which is something that image scanners would have difficulty doing because they have to base it based on heuristics.
So I just caught actually something that needs to be fixed. I didn't remove the linkage here from when I transposed this over from the website for the glossary artifact dependency graph. We do redefine most of these terms further down in the spec. So
Ed, somewhere around the second sentence, did you want to say something about reproducibility of builds?
If you want to drop a suggestion in there, I'd be very open to it.
For sure.
So my suspicion is that people will need to digest this a little bit more. Is there other comments that people have at this time about this? This one's a little bit more substantive. Also, my writing should always be questioned.
Yeah, I'll add a comment about the runtime stuff. That doesn't resonate particularly strongly with me. Like, I mean, sure, it's a thing that you could possibly do, but it doesn't seem like a top level introduction type thing.
No, I'm I'm fine with that. That actually transposed over from the front page. Please note that my statement about it transposing over from the front page is not an argument in favor of it. It's just an observation about its provenance.
Instead of runtime detection, if we just put identification of potential vulnerabilities, then that just makes it generic enough where it should resolve that.
Cool. No, I'm good with that.
I mean, a lot of both the post-exploit forensics and the runtime detection imply a security model that I don't think we have.
That's an interesting observation.
Because none of this information is signed or has any sort of authenticated origin. Like, it's like if you find a like an Omnibor section in your L file, like that's interesting in an advisory way, but you can't trust it in any way. So,
well, or to put it differently, any ability to trust it is going to have to come from additional things, right? So if I find an Omnibor section and I have a full in toto, collection of the steps whereby it was produced from multiple independent providers that match up with that, you could establish trust, but intrinsically this doesn't in and of itself establish trust.
right.
Does that make sense?
So that's a thing that you might be able to use. Enabling.
Yep. So it
Hmm.
feels like folks want a little bit of time to mull and comment offline on this. Is that kind of where we are?
General question. This question was more common whenever I tried to talk to others about when it was Git bomb. It was very common. One of the things is what is the overlap between bombs and is it a bomb, right? That can I not achieve the same thing using an SBOM? So maybe that will not come with the word Omnibor as obviously as it was when it was Git bomb. Should there be any information for supporting that question in this document or elsewhere? I don't know too much about what SBOMs like SPDX, etc. could do, but I think I myself would like to learn the answer to be able to give a compelling argument to why this is not just a duplication of something that's already been done.
So that's a very good point. Could you add a comment to that effect here?
Okay.
Because I think trying to address that is both a good idea and almost certainly not something we can do within the last 15 minutes of this call.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, my intuition here is I don't think the answer probably fits in the spec itself, but it's one that absolutely needs to be addressed and would probably make a really great article that we could put on the webpage as to how they all integrate together. And there's also questions about, because the thing that the SBOMs don't capture that is incredibly important is they don't capture any process information. By process, I think of like in toto where like step one is you perform this task, like you downloaded the source from these locations. Step two would be like you ran your preprocessor. Step three would be actually running the compiler. Step four, you link them, et cetera, et cetera. Until you get to your final result. The other, granted, we're not solving the process issue either, but it also doesn't solve the issue as to what did the internal compiler itself do in its own internal transformations. The SBOM just gives you a really high level, like the recipe calls for eggs, but what then? Like it doesn't give you any information beyond that.
Yep. So I'm going to keep us moving along a little bit because we are running a bit short on time. In large part because I'm not nearly as good at running a crisp meeting as Nell is. But the next one was, hang on. Yeah, it's okay. We've already added back NXB. Then would it be okay if we came back to the URI related comments? There were some comments about the URI spec as well. Let me just sort of run through those quickly. I answered some of the things that you had asked about that. Robert, so you had sort of asked, what does see previous answer here mean?
Yeah.
And I literally had pulled that from other URI scheme documents, pointing back at the scheme creator in terms of change control.
Okay. I mean, I didn't get the context of that when I was looking at it. So, yeah.
Okay. And then you had asked about the Gitoid URI identifying particular objects in the Git repository. Would it be the same there? And I guess the point that we're really making is that it identifies a byte array no matter how it's sort of persisted. And I think I made a comment about, further down, part of why file wasn't used is the same byte array, whether it's persistent in a file, a database field, an HTTP message, or chiseled in stone on the side of a mountain. would have the same Gitoid.
Okay, okay, sure. Yeah, that's fine. That wasn't clear to me, and I'm still wondering, however,
Mhm. Yes.
is that actually true?
The Gitoid being the same, independent of how the byte array has been persisted.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, that's fine. I'm
Yeah,
still
no, it
learning.
absolutely is.
I'm still
No,
learning.
that ping me offline. I'll walk you through it. It's very easy to see when you get like one level down from here.
Okay.
And I'm happy to walk you through that one level down.
Mhm.
You also caught like a really good catch on the word should in there, where effectively there was this, and this is sort of language nets, it should be possible to construct an analogous get object header from the Gitoid as the Gitoid contains the get object type. And there's no reason for that to be stated in an uncertain voice. It is true. And so I translated should is in these.
Got it.
Because
That should language turns up in quite a few places in spec.md as well.
in where?
In spec.md.
Ah, okay. That is definitely because should there are two possible ways could be used in SpecMD. One is sort of the RFC mumble version of it, which is what we say you should do something. And the other is the sort of uncertainty bit. And the uncertainty bit should probably be weeded out when there's no uncertainty. Everyone good with 30? Would anyone have any objection to merging 33?
Nope.
Would you be willing to do the honors, Jeremy? Any thanks. And then number 34, there was a comment about the language for the security section. And to my eyes, the suggestion that Robert made everything enormously clearer, right? They previously said the general security considerations for section 7 of RFC 9886 apply, but no other security considerations have been identified at time of registration. And the wording that Robert suggested just felt a lot clearer.
I agree that it's clear.
Everyone else good with this rewording? Cool. Would you be willing to do the honors, Robert?
I don't really know how to merge, or I'm not sure if I have.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Robert, but Jeremy. Sorry. Things crossed in my brain. Many thanks. And I think that's the end of Robert's input at this time. Thank you so much, Robert. It was extremely helpful and very productive. Given the shortness of time, there's a couple of things I did want to hit on. The first is the removing of the link farm section from Annex A. So we had been talking about the possibility of having a no embed mode option. And I think it's probably most productive to break that out into a separate appendix if we're going to do it. Because I know Jeremy had brought up a number of issues around that. And I know that as we've had at least one person, Vajislav, try and implement the link farm stuff from Appendix A, and it turns out to be quite complicating. And so I had pushed a PR to simply remove the link farm section from Annex A for the moment until we can figure out what we want to do with the no embed pieces as a follow-on behavior. Do folks have thoughts, opinions, or?
No objections from me.
Yeah, the external stuff is not a 10-minute conversation.
I'm sorry, which Jeremy, I didn't quite hear you.
I was just saying the like external metadata is not a 10-minute conversation.
Yeah. Is everyone okay with merging this PR?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Would you be willing to do the honors, Jeremy?
Sorry, which one?
It's number 32. Let me stick the link in.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Merged.
Okay. So the last item that I would suggest that we discuss today would be the proposal to only generate the Omnibor when Omnibor dir is specified. But given that I've been driving this meeting pretty hard and that we're down to the last 6 minutes, I wanted to make sure that that there wasn't something else that people would like to make sure we cover this meeting before we go diving down that rabbit hole. Okay, I'm going to take silence to be golden then. So this is more as a discussion than anything else. And I know that Ava has some strong opinions about this, so I don't really want us to necessarily merge this today, but I wanted to open the conversation. Previously in the spec, we had basically said the presence of an empty Omnibor dir environment variable should be taken as a signal to skip the Omnibor generation, and lack of an Omnibor dir environment variable should not be taken as a signal to not generate an Omnibor. I think the current tooling that we have for compilers is effectively not generating Omnibor data if you don't have something that specifies the Omnibor directory. And I also know from some of the conversations that were had at the LLVM summit that part of making people comfortable with this was that it was an opt-in kind of a feature on the compilers. And so my suggestion would be that we move to saying effectively the absence of specification of an Omnibor dir should be taken as a signal to skip Omnibor generation. Do folks have thoughts or opinions or?
I think that's a good idea, primarily because I think we're going to see a lot of caution with tooling, and demanding that people generate off the bat may have implications on, especially when we look at embedded systems that play weird tricks with alignment and similar. Not that they should, but they do. We may end up breaking things in subtle ways that we do not foresee. But I think that given enough time, that people could shift their stance on this. So maybe 5 to 10 years out from now, I could see a world where people are comfortable enough with it that they turn it into an opt-out rather than an opt-in. But I don't think coming in with that is going to be helpful.
I think the specific question here is about generating file system metadata rather than injecting metadata into the object files. So I don't think it should have any functional effect on like the emitted artifacts. But I do think that tools shouldn't be splattering stuff throughout the file system unless it's explicitly asked to, because certainly in the sort of like distributed build system, this file system stuff is not useful. And we have to have a conversation about what the actual interface for generating Omnibor information is in those sorts of circumstances. So like the emitting metadata and file system is, I think, kind of a useful bootstrap thing to get the ecosystem going, but is not the long-term solution.
That's a good point as well, because I suspect what will end up happening is on cloud native based build systems run into one of two things. Either the file system itself will be immutable except for the actual build location itself, or the system will be mutable, but any changes that were made will be discarded and not captured unless they explicitly ask for those things to be captured. So, which then gives us limited utility.
Also, if the
So
variable's not set, like it's not clear where the data is being written, like just writing to .adg and whatever the current working directory is could be anywhere in the tree. Like you presumably want all these things writing into the same directory, and unless there's a environment variable or something set specifically pointing at that directory, you can't guess it.
Yeah, that was also part of why I struck bullet 3 in this particular edit. And so the heart of there's a number of interesting things here, because I think what you're arguing for, Jeremy, is that we should consider the questions of Omnibor generation independent of the question of whether or not we're going to file system persist the data, which I think is a valid question. And so a little bit more thought. So it's very clear that if I don't tell you where to put the Omnibor data, you shouldn't go put it there. If I am a file system oriented build tool, then where to go look? Right, I actually don't need to know where to go look now that you mention it, because you got the embedding, which is one of the nice things about the embedding. So I would suggest that we capture a little bit of these thoughts here in the comments. And since we're right up against time, we can come back to this subsequently. Also, because I know that Ava had some very strong feelings about this language, and I intensely dislike clipping language that people feel feel strongly about in their absence. You don't sneak changes past people. Oh, and thank you, Robert, for noting.
I have some thoughts on this. I'll put them in the comments if there's no time to discuss now.
Many thanks. So we are right up against the hour. Is there anything else from folks before we conclude?
We need to think about a mascot. I have cats, which are carnivores. Nell has rabbits, which are herbivores. We have no omnivores.
That's true.
Ooh, that's cool.
Excellent point.
This is a good point.
But we're omnivores, most of us, at least.
This is true.
Well, it's certainly definitionally that all of us are omnivore capable. Not all of us are omnivore or have opted into omnivory.
I see omnivore as being a ravenous tree.
That is also potentially fun. The tree that eats the world. All right, so we are now over time. I will go ahead and let everyone go and see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for leading, Ed. I'm happy to lead next week too.
You're much crisper at it than I am, and I appreciate that. But I know when you're sick, every little bit drains you. So,
cool.
All right. Talk to you later.
Have a good day, everyone.